I mean, why aren't they protecting us? And it's not just with the GM foods; it's with everything.
Well, I talked to a scientist who used to work.
And let me just point this out.
All right.
They are very smart to jump on stories of product recalls. E. coli is out in the system. Where's the lettuce? That becomes a major story. We cover those, and it makes them look like they're on top of things. We're going to find the farm. We're going to find the distributor, and off they go. Yet the big picture, they don't seem to touch. Why not?
Well, at the FDA, and I've spoken to people who used to work at the FDA, one guy, for example, who was fired because he was holding up the approval process of Monsanto's genetically modified bovine growth hormone by having the audacity of ordering more tests. They fired him and canceled the test.
Which they sold that division.
Yeah, they sold it to Elanco, which is Eli Lilly's veterinary division, because they saw that the tipping point of consumer rejection was underway. It was kicked out of the milk from Walmart and Starbucks and Yoplait and Dannon and Kroger's and Publix and most of the top dairies. So they just got rid of it and gave it to Eli Lilly, and Eli Lilly's now chopping it around and trying to promote what I would consider falsified or
it's a little like Fox buying MySpace. It is. They don't know what to do with it anymore.
Exactly. So in terms of the FDA, when you talk to people at the FDA, they refer to their clients as the companies that they're regulating. And this is both in the United States and in Canada. I was talking to a whistleblower in Health Canada, which is as bad as the FDA apparently, and he said, no, the client is the public. And they said, no, the client is the pharmaceutical company. And he realized that they have basically free reign. A huge percentage of people who have high positions in the FDA, when they leave the FDA, they take up very well-paid positions in the pharmaceutical companies that they were helping get their products approved.
Yes.
And so there's that revolving door.
Or the food companies, whatever, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, at the FDA, when they were looking at bovine growth hormone from Monsanto, Monsanto's former researcher moved from Monsanto's company into the FDA and was in charge of the division that reviewed her research.
Well, here's a case in point. When we talk about aspartame later with Betty Martini, Arthur Hull Hayes Jr., who was the FDA commissioner under Reagan,
right,
who had to resign under a cloud of suspicion, after he was the deciding vote to make aspartame legal. When he ended up leaving under this allegations of impropriety, he served as a public relations guy for Burstyn Marsteller, a huge public relations company, which represented G.D. Searle, which made aspartame.
Oh, yeah, it gets worse. I mean, I'm sure Betty can talk about that, but the attorney that was suing G.D. Searle decided to give up his case and join the opposing law firm. Then his assistant took over, and then he let the statute of limitations run out, and then he joined the law firm for $400,000.
Oh, my
I mean,
God.
It's absolutely. I talked to one whistleblower. I mean, one FDA observer, Jim Turner, who wrote Chemical Feast for the Nader report on the FDA. He said, in the FDA, there's three types of people. There's some of the most intelligent scientists he's ever met.
Hard workers.
Then there's some of the most unintelligent scientists who can't get a job anywhere else. And then the third category is the political appointees who have a completely different agenda. When I read the memos, and I didn't read all 44,000, but I read the key memos that were made public from a lawsuit, the FDA scientists were very upset. One, Louis Pribble, a microbiologist, said, he said every time the policy was being given to upstairs, the political appointees, would come back with less and less science. And he said, what's become of this document? It's basically a pro-industry document, a political document that doesn't address consumers' concerns and side effects. And he predicted successfully, he was a brilliant predictor, he said, I don't think because of this that the Monsantos of the world will do the actual safety studies they would normally do, because they're not required, and that over time people will have a false sense of security because it's been done hundreds of times, and so there's no problem. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. So we see an op-ed piece in the New York Times, a complete advertisement for Monsanto, claiming that there's not a problem with the safety. And we see even the New York Times editorial from this week claiming that the herbicide Roundup is benign. Complete mythology but being picked up because of the incredible amount of pressure and lobbying and money. And another example of the effectiveness of that lobbying was a statement by Dan Glickman back in we're just at the end of the Clinton years when he was stepping down after being Secretary of Agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
He said, what I saw generically from the pro-biotech side was the attitude that the technology was good and that it was almost immoral to say that it wasn't good because it was going to solve the problems of the human race and feed the hungry and clothe the naked. And if you're against it, you're Luddites, you're stupid, and that, frankly, was the side our government was on. He said you felt like an alien or disloyal by trying to present an open-minded view. He said this attitude was written into his speeches. And when he actually decided to ad-lib and raise the issue that GMOs maybe should be labeled, he said he was slapped around by not only the biotech industry, but also by people in the Clinton administration, and feared that he would be fired. And it was only after he met with Hillary Clinton and she said she liked what he had said that he realized he wasn't going to be fired. So this is an example of how they force these politicians to walk in lockstep. They write it into their speeches. And so it's hard. It's like the current Obama administration has put all these pro-biotech people into top positions in the USDA and, of course, the FDA. And you don't have any idea what kind of information is actually getting to Obama because these guys have got this information down to a science. And they've got bad science down to a science.
And maybe they just don't think we're watching, but we are. We'll be back with more with Jeffrey Smith on Coast to Coast AM.
Sign up now for Coast Zone, our free email newsletter. Get it today at coasttocoastam.com.
Jeffrey, so there are no labels on foods that say they are genetically modified, but are the organic or those with natural foods, are they putting on labels that say, hey, we've got, we're organic or we're natural? Are they on labels? Are they put them on the food?
Yes, there's the organic products are not allowed to consciously use GMOs, and then there's also hundreds of products or some large number that have voluntarily put non-GMO on the label. Now, of course, there's the possibility of contamination, and anything that has an at-risk ingredient that does use corn or soy or cotton or canola, for example, has the capacity to have a contamination irrespective of how good the farmer is and how much precaution he is or she has taken. So there is a new system out called the Non-GMO Project, and that actually is another seal, a very specific seal you'll be starting to see on products this year. There's thousands of products enrolled, and that actually requires testing so that if someone is going to say non-GMO, it's a specific third-party verified system with a uniform standard. So it's not just like anyone saying, well, we say it's non-GMO because of our own criteria. So that actually is a very important addition, and it's being picked up by the natural food industry. In fact, it's so important that Supermarket News in December said that the Non-GMO Project plus our website, nongmoshoppingguide.com, are the two reasons why 2010 will see an unprecedented upsurge of consumer awareness and concern about GMOs, and linked GMOs in the category of trans fats and too much sugar, salt, or carbs. And what it indicated was that we might see a revolution in consciousness about GMOs that will change the way the food companies produce their products. But unlike trans fats and sugar and salt and carbs, GMOs give no consumer benefit. So you won't see companies saying low GMO. You'll see companies, if they see a drop in market share of even a tiny percentage, they're going to eliminate GMOs. In fact, these major companies like Kraft have already eliminated GMOs for their European markets, for their Japanese markets.
Well, all right. I'm going to take you on a food shopping spree.
Great.
And I want you to point things out to us here as we walk through this shopping center here. Are you ready?
Yep.
Here we go. We're going inside. The doors, of course, open automatically.
Yep.
That makes it easier. We got a little basket here, and we're walking through the produce section. Jeffrey, tell me what is genetically modified there, first of all, vegetables and fruits.
Good news on produce. You only have to think about 4 items, okay? We've said them all: corn on the cob, papaya, but only papaya from Hawaii, zucchini, and yellow squash. Every other thing in the produce section will be non-GMO. There's no GM tomatoes. They were taken off the market. The potatoes were taken off the market. Now, there's there's experimental varieties that are in the laboratories, but they're not going to be in the produce section.
And if they are, you'll let us know.
That's absolutely. Get on, sign up for Spilling the Beans, our free electronic newsletter, and anything that comes out new, you will be informed immediately and know what to avoid.
Okay, so we're going to walk past the processed meats. We don't want those anymore.
Right. Now, the thing is, meat's got two things. Processed meat's got two things. It'll have the soy. It may have the corn derivatives, but the animals themselves are eating the genetically modified feed. Now, I was talking to some farmers, and this is completely new information that I haven't shared with anyone yet. There's farmers, when they butcher the animals and they remove the organs and whatnot, they're seeing clear differences in the animals that are fed GM and non-GM.
That's amazing. In what ways?
Well, for example, it turns out that certain farmers like to use the intestines of pigs for casings, for sausages.
Yes, that's
but
true.
In the United States, a lot of people are going to New Zealand because for some reason the intestines just tear easily when they're being removed from a pig. And one of these guys who butchers the animals was shocked to find that when he was butchering pigs that ate non-GMO diets, the intestines were thick and intact, and he could pull them all out and use them for casings, whereas the pigs that were being fed genetically modified had very thin and terrible things. I also received a picture from farmers. This is anecdotal evidence. We can't bank on this stuff.
Do you eat the casing, by the way? I always take it off. When in my day, whenever I'd go out and get some salami in St. Louis or something like that, or L.A., I would slice the top of that and kind of unwrap the casing.
Well, to me, I don't know. It's been a while since I ate that salami. I mean, I eat pretty much organic meats and things like that. So, but I also looked at pictures of intestines and organs from cows, and this guy described it. He said, when you look at the organs, when you cut open an animal that's been eating GMO compared to the non-GMO that he uses, he said the GMO-fed animal smells horrible and has yellow all over it, and the intestines are purple.
Oh, my.
When he opens up the animals, like the cows that are fed on natural grain that's been properly raised, it's white, not yellow. The lard is white instead of yellow. The intestines are white. And I actually saw the pictures, purple versus white. And this is fascinating. Another person actually went to a slaughterhouse and looked at the stomach of pigs that were fed GM or non-GM, and he found there were more ulcerations in the stomachs of the pigs that were fed the GM grain.
All right.
Now, if you think about it, if you think about the intestines being thin or terrible, and you think about the ulcerations in the stomach, then you think about what does the BT corn do? What it does is it breaks open the intestines or the stomach or the digestive system of insects and kills them. What if the BT toxin that's inside the corn is causing problems in the intestines and digestive tract?
Right.
And whenever I give a talk at doctors' conferences, and I do often, and I talk about the BT toxin and some of the other problems with gut bacteria, then the doctors say, we've seen a lot of gastrointestinal problems in our practices since GMOs were introduced. And they say that especially in response to the only human feeding study ever published, which shows that the genes inserted into soybeans actually transfer into the bacteria of the intestine, of the bacteria living inside our intestines, and continue to function. Now, remember we said earlier that the soybeans are Roundup ready, designed for the soybean plant not to die when sprayed with Roundup. Well, it turns out that these human volunteers that had the gene transfer, their gut bacteria was Roundup ready.
Jeez.
So that means that the gene inside inside the DNA was functioning and producing this Roundup ready protein. Now, fast forward. What if the BT gene from a corn chip transfers to your gut bacteria as well? It might theoretically turn it into a living pesticide factory.
It could.
So now, they never tested it because this is the pro-GM UK government that funded that study. And as soon as they found out, they never followed up to see if the BT gene transferred or the antibiotic-resistant marker genes used in GMOs transferred. And that could cause potentially super diseases untreatable with antibiotics. But that wasn't looked at.